Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Ball Caps and Bagpipes. I am the Glasgow Comets, John McKellar, and I'm one half of Ball Caps and Bagpipes.
And I'm the other half, the better-looking half, Jason Durr, former league president, Baseball Scotland Hall of Famer. Sorry, you set me up on that one.
Good to see you, Jason. How about them Yankees? 10 wins in a row.
That's right. That's going to accompany us by 10 losses in a row soon enough. So.
I don't believe you, Jason. This is the year. This is the Yankees' year. I've been saying it all along, if I know. I'm pretty sure I've been saying it all along that Cashman is the best general manager there is, and that he's infallible and he never makes mistakes. And go Rangers.
I'm just waiting for you guys to pick up Robinson Cano because you guys need old aging guys that need to finish out their career somewhere.
Yeah, you got to fill up that retirement home.
Exactly.
Jason, we are here to talk about week 5 already of the 2022 Scottish baseball season. Big weekend of results. Let's get right in about it, man. The first one was an absolutely crushing victory for the Tayport Breakers, who improved to 4-1 at the weekend by beating the Granite City Oilers by a final score of 29-1. That's a massive scoreline for the Breakers. The Oilers, of course, slipped to 0-5 for the year with that one. You got to give credit where it's due to the Oilers for sticking around. I did see the tweet that the Breakers put out about the props that they gave the Oilers for managing to tough it out to the Mayor So yeah, a massive victory. Runs aplenty for Tayport, and of course we've always known that they had the ability to hit the ball and hit the ball well. They're showing that in abundance early on in this season. In Glasgow, there was the Glasgow Derby. Now, the Comets took a 6-0 lead early on. Santino started the game, pitched really well. A variety of arms went out and through the rest of the way. It didn't work out in the second half of the game. The Galaxy came away 10-6 victors. They again showed a lot of spirit. That's not the first time that the Galaxy have done that in a Glasgow Derby this year. They've been behind, they've rallied and showed a lot of spirit and come back to win. So a massive victory for Glasgow. The Galaxy. And in the Edinburgh Derby, which I think you popped along for briefly and saw a wee bit of, the Cannons defeated the Devils 7-4 to improve their perfect record to 5-0 for the year. You mentioned that something pretty notable did happen in the Edinburgh game.
Yeah, it doesn't happen very often, but Kit Cyril still home place off Kyle Huffey. I was sticking around for that one, and being Kyle's a left-handed pitcher, Kid had a pretty big lead. Next thing you know, he was stealing home. And all I could think about is, please don't swing. We don't have a doctor on hand here. Luckily, I believe it was Lucas who was up at the plate. He saw him coming and made it with plenty of time there. But it was quite an impressive steal of home.
How often do you see that in Scottish baseball? Have you ever seen that happen before in the game that you played in?
No, I think it's been maybe once, but even then, I can't even think about when the last time I saw it. So to be there to actually see it happen, I mean, that's even less rare than home runs for our league.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the single A division, there was only the one game. I think that the Knights and Breakers game's been postponed till later in the season. The only game that took place was the Glasgow Derby in the A division. The Comets held on and won that one. The final score there was 13-3. The slump continues, I must admit, Jason. Week 5, I need to get like a counter on the screen of how many days that this slump's been going on. I didn't perform particularly well at the plate. I did draw a walk, stole a couple of bases, scored a run, so I'm getting there. The defensive play by the Comets single A team was much sharper, and I think that we are really growing into our own as a defensive unit. And the guys got some really key hits, very smart base running, and were able to pull out the win there to improve to 2-2 on the year. Let's quickly go into the standings because I want to move as quickly as possible into our interview portion tonight. We've got a guy that probably needs no introduction among Scottish baseball players and people who are interested in the league. My coach on the Comets and a Scottish baseball legend. Next year he's going to be celebrating 25 years playing baseball, and he's still only 29 years old. Jason Stott will be joining us on the show to have a chat about his long baseball journey and managing the Comets and how he kind of sees this season going so far. Let's first off to the standings. In AAA, the Cannons, of course, are 5-0. They are still in first place by a game ahead of the Breakers, who are currently 4-1. In second place, In third place are the Galaxy, who improved to 3 and 2. Of course, the Comets are the reverse of that. In fourth, they are 2 and 3. The Diamond Devils are still struggling early on this season. They're 1 and 4. And of course, the Oilers, as we mentioned, they're rooted to the bottom still at the moment with an 0 and 5 record. And in single A, the Breakers and Knights, no change, no movement there. They are both 2 and 0 and 2 and 1 respectively. So the Breakers ahead by, I guess, a half game. If you use the old the way that, the Major League Baseball standings get calculated. The Comets are third with the 500 record on 2 and 2, and the Galaxy are fourth and last at the moment on 0 and 3. Let's, without further ado, bring our guest for tonight on then, Jason. We've got Jason Stott joining the show now.
Right, let's bring him on.
And there he is. Hello, Jason Stott. Thank you so very much for joining us on the show. It's great to have you on finally by yourself so that we can go a wee bit further into your baseball story and the journey you've had as a player. Now, as I mentioned in the open there, next season, despite the fact that currently you're still only 29 years old, you'll be celebrating 25 years playing baseball. Why don't we start there? How did you become involved in baseball at 5 years old? And where did your interest come from initially?
Aye, well, it's a pleasure for being here. Thanks for having me. So next year it'll be 25 years, hard to believe. But it was all a bit of a coincidence, to be fair. It was a family friend, a neighbour of ours, who created the club back in 1997. He had experience in his homeland of teaching kids baseball and wanted to get it started up in the East End of Glasgow. And my parents decided that me and my sister should go along, and the rest is history, really. We had at that time 4 leisure centres dotted around Glasgow that all had a bunch of kids going. Managed to get quite a bit of interest through a few of the schools. And we took it from there. It kind of grew into its own mini league in and around Glasgow, and I was one of the few that stuck around, shall we say.
Now, you say you're one of the few. There are a couple of other guys that have been with you for large parts of most, if not almost all of that journey. Now, obviously, Xander Harrison, former Comets manager, and I think a linchpin of Glasgow baseball over the years. He was around for quite a long time alongside you. Santino De Rosa as well. What are some of your memories growing up with those guys and learning the game with them and playing together? Do you have any favourite memories of that time coming up as youngsters?
Yeah, generally speaking, on a Sunday when you would go up and play your games, it was a bit of a family event. Every weekend, all the parents got on with each other. You'd go up and spend, could be 4 or 5 hours at the field. And it was just good fun. We had a kind of tuck shop set up, and you would have the barbecue on for the hot dogs and stuff. And gradually over the next few years, as some of the kids got older, you ended up having various age levels all playing. So you would have your T-ball, Bronco, Pony. And then again, we started to dip our toes in the kind of adult teams as I got a little bit older, which is, it gave the likes of myself, Xander, Ross Deeney, Michael McCusker, a few of the guys, Santino even, Darren, the guys that had been playing since they were young, gave them a platform to go and try their hand against the adult teams when we were kind of age, so 14, 15. So it was good.
Yeah, so let's dive into that then when you were about 14, 15, because we've covered this in the last couple of weeks. So it's actually been mentioned between Jason and I. You guys, and I think it was 2007, you guys went, what would it have been, 0-12, 0-14 at the time, Jason, there?
We won one game.
You won the ones. So we're correcting the record here, because Jason Dare said that you went winless the whole season. You won the one game that year. 2008, though, was a very different story. You guys flipped that on its head and went and won the league as a bunch of 15, 16, 17-year-olds. What was it between those 2 years that you think changed? Is there a particular person that you think deserves the credit for putting that unit together and turning it into a winner? Or what was it, in your eyes, in your opinion, that made that 2008 team so special?
That's a good question. I guess you had a pool of guys like myself and Xander who were just on the fringe of being a regular player, we would be more the guys that would go to make up numbers. And don't get me wrong, more weeks than not, there would be a few guys with work commitments or they wouldn't be able to play. So we got the opportunity, but I guess it was a couple of years us bedding into the team, and then we eventually managed to kind of get our feet in the door, and we were coming into games later as kind of welcome additions. And at the time, we did have a good pool of players. But again, if you fast forward a couple of years after that, it was when we kind of hit a rocky patch, and the club, to an extent, was on the verge of just calling it a day. There was games that we were showing up with 9 people in the dot, and the guy who was looking after the team at the time had some family commitments, and he was going to be stepping away a wee bit. And that was a point where me and another couple of the boys said, right, we'll take it on. But at the time, we would have been 18-year-old. So it kind of changed year to year. One year you could have had, similar to what it is in current day, you could have 4 or 5 fresh faces turn up, and all of a sudden you're really competing. And at the time it was only one team, so 3 or 4 new faces did make a big difference. Next year, if they were students and they were going back to their own country, or if they just lost interest, you were really struggling. So it was really challenging year on year, kind of throughout that period.
Yeah, I mean, we've spoken to Xander Harrison, I believe it was at the end of season 2 of the show, and we actually asked him about that time where you guys, it was kind of you and Xander and maybe 1 or 2 others were sort of running the team by committee. Obviously, we're talking about GBA, the single team that existed before we split into the 2, which we'll get into a bit later. And he indicated to us that he was kind of reluctant to be a coach or a manager. A lot of it being to do with age. Did you have the same view that it was a lot of kind of unwarranted pressure on both of you, and did it hamper your development, did you feel, as a player? Because obviously we're there to play and we're there to enjoy it. To be so young and to have that responsibility thrust on you, that must have been quite a lot of pressure.
Yeah, it wasn't. I'd like to put that down to my declining performance in the last 10 years. So we'll say that's why it is. But no, again, it was, I remember it very well. It was a meeting up at our field, a group of 8 or 9 of us all standing in a huddle saying, right, so what are we doing here? And there was an air of silence for a few minutes, and it really fell on us as the youngsters to go, right, well, we're still going to play. We're going to be up here. We'll take it forward if you're still up for it. And everyone just kind of nodded and went, okay. And don't get me wrong, there's that kind of niggling thought in the back of your head as, right, I'm an 18-year-old. Am I going to have guys twice my age listening to what I'm going to tell them to do? Do they trust that I know enough about the game to take this forward? But I guess it's testament that little under 3 years later, we managed to grow the club into 2 adult teams, which we'd never had before.
Absolutely,
so
yeah.
I would say we managed to do a half-decent job.
For sure, yeah. Let's talk about the split then, because obviously we've covered the title win, and there was a bit of a drought. I mean, Edinburgh kind of absolutely hammered the league for the better part of a decade before the Galaxy's 3-time consecutive title wins. Talk to us about the decision to split the teams into 2. You've got the Comets and the Galaxy that came out of the GBA after it was my first full season, I think 2014. How early were the discussions taking place for that to start with?
I think the initial discussion would have been the year previous, and I guess a big push from when me and Xander took over the club was our social media presence, which was near non-existent beforehand. And through that, and through the effort that we put in when first implementing that, we had a lot of guys that had been in the country for a while that had never knew anything about it, and we were proactively trying to make training sessions a lot more fun, inclusive, having sessions where you were splitting it into beginners and more intensive training. And before we knew it, around about that 2012 mark, we had far too many people for one team. And that 2012 season, there was a lot of guys that were showing up really passionate about playing, putting in a lot of effort, showing up on training and game days and not really getting an opportunity. So we thought it was worth the risk of, let's try splitting into 2 rather than losing these guys, because if it continues the way it is, they're not gonna stick around much longer. And it was difficult at first, but yeah, we got there in the end.
Yeah. Now, the Comets had a really great first year in 2014. I think we finished above the Galaxy. I think it was one position above the Galaxy at the time. Now, you were with the Dark Blues at the time. This was prior to Galaxy, really. I mean, guys like Luke and Jim Seahar coming along who really pushed the Galaxy over the edge, and you guys won a couple of titles before you came over to the Comets. How did you feel about that initial season and the success of both sides and how the club went when you broke up into the two?
Well, firstly, I think I gave Xander all the best players, which is why we finished below them. But no, it was good. It was. I don't think me or Xander, if we were being completely honest, went in with any real expectation. The aim for the end of the year was just to make sure that we'd kept guys interested and that we hadn't went out and repeated our 2007 season or whatever it was you were referring to earlier. We wanted to make sure we got a few wins under our belt. So, yeah, again, we maybe overachieved in a way. But again, at that time, we had some really good players across both teams. Guys that are still with us now, guys that have unfortunately moved on from the Comets. You're talking the likes of Kago and Francis and that, guys that were absolute godsends at the time. Later on the Galaxy, we had guys like Ricardo show up, who again, just an absolute player. And certainly before his injuries would have been far too good for our league. But it was peaks and troughs. You had guys show up who were game changers, and guys that were still learning and still trying to get the fundamentals down after a couple of years. So it was really different getting into every season.
Now, in addition to being the Comets' current head coach, you're also the president of the Glasgow Baseball Association. Talk to us a wee bit about the extra duties that entails. Now, you have like sort of a responsibility to, while you're coaching the Comets and trying to win us ball games, you have a responsibility to ensure there's like some parity and that both sides of the Glasgow Association are competing every year. Talk us through your responsibilities there and how you manage to juggle that.
It was, I'm kind of blessed in a way that on the other side of Glasgow, or the other side of the GBA, should I say, I've got John Tafe, absolute godsend at the time. Certainly after Xander went down to London, John's been really instrumental in helping the club get to the next level, and we are again blessed with a good number of folk throughout the club that are willing to put in time and effort in the backroom operations as part of our committee. Mm-hmm. So I would be doing them a disservice if I say it was all down to me. There's obviously bits and pieces that you deal with in terms of liaising with the council and the field, funding, arranging events and stuff, and generally the club finances. But again, we're really managing to split the wealth quite a bit. A lot of people have stepped up, so you'll get different people that take on different roles. Secretary, we've got obviously the guys that look after the social media, who are doing a key job on that. So I'll be honest, it's a role, it's a title, should I say. It's very much a joint effort with everybody included. And most things now just come down to a bit of a vote or a discussion, and we take it forward for there. So purely for constitutional purposes, it's very much a title.
Righto. Let's step away from the sort of running of things and talk about you as a player. Now you play first base, you pitch from time to time. I believe you've caught it in the past. You've pretty much played, I think, most positions just in the time that I've known you. What would you consider to be your natural position? I know that you've had a couple of shoulder problems in the kind of earlier part of the last decade that I think limited your availability in certain roles on the field. But like, as you kind of grew up, what would you say was your primary position growing up and the one that you were always the best in?
In the younger days, it was always a wee bit of pitching. wee bit of second base, wee bit of third base. As I've gotten older, first base seems to be my preference. Not as mobile as I used to be. But no, I do enjoy first base, and I don't know, I feel as if that's where my strengths have lay lately. Don't get me wrong, certainly last season, I had to bring the rubber arm out quite a few times to see us to the end of a game. But if my stats are anything to go by, I didn't do too bad a job.
I would certainly agree with that, Jason. Now, I want to talk about 17, 18, 19. Glasgow Galaxy, obviously, you were still with the Glasgow Galaxy, the team that you originally ran. 3 straight championships, including the first ever League and Caledonia Cup double. Talk us through that 3-year stretch. I know that we've talked about Luke Powell in the past, and we've talked about John Taife's impact on the Galaxy, and he certainly helped lay the foundation for that. Talk to us about your memories of that team in those 3 years.
That was a cracking time to be part of the team. I guess the success all came from me laying the foundations for John Taife to take over. But no, genuinely, the reason
I don't think he would argue with that. In honesty, I don't think he would argue with that. Like you guys have definitely both played a massive part in the building of that roster and the culture of winning that team.
No, it's a running joke that I was involved with the Galaxy for a couple of years, consistently finished second, and then as soon as I take a year out to have a child, John Taife all of a sudden manages to get it over the line. So I thought it was only fair that when I did come back, I let him remain in the position. And it was good at that time. I kind of took a step back and just enjoyed my time as a player, knowing fine well that I wouldn't have been able to make every game. But I think the reason that team was so successful was consistency. You know, the 9 that started the first year they won the league wasn't too dissimilar from the team that won the double 2 years later. There was a lot of kind of core players that stuck around, and when you were having to change, it was 1 or 2 people here or there. So we got to know how each other play, and it was key to that. But I guess you'll have probably seen that trend, because I think it was the Devils would have won it 4 years in a row, the Cannons won it 4 years in a row. There seemed to be the cup staying in the same city for a good period of time. So I guess that's, particularly in Scottish baseball, that's really key, is just getting to grips with your own teammates and actually figuring out tactics and stuff, and actually being able to play as a unit.
Absolutely. Now, 2020, we didn't have a season due to coronavirus. However, you still managed to win a trophy. So you were a 4-time consecutive trophy winner. The Comets, of course, playing one competitive game that year, the Glasgow City Trophy game, which the Comets won, largely off the back of David Flores, who made his debut in that game and absolutely stormed it. So you won silverware 4 years in a row. Of course, you made the trip to the trip across the divide into the Glasgow Comets. Talk to us about how that came about, because obviously we've discussed Sander. He was in charge of the team for a couple of years. He headed down south for work reasons. And then I think from there it was John Nelson took over, former MVP of the league, a guy who's probably got as much history in baseball as Jason Dare has. And then from there it was Gio Coulter took over for a year or two. Obviously Gio retired at the end of 2019. When was the decision made that you would make that trip across the divide? And why was that decision made at the time?
It's a good question. There was a wee bit of trial and error after Xander moved down south. There was a couple of willing parties looking to get involved in it, and I was actually contemplating doing it a bit earlier. But we gave John his run out, done very well. We gave Gio his run out after John wanted to take a bit of time out. Gio also done very well. But I guess we felt that after the Galaxy won, kind of 3 in a row, at the time, and again, it kind of goes back to what you're saying about as president of the club and trying to keep the interests of the entire club at the forefront. The teams were a bit uneven, probably after that period of time. Comets had lost a few, Galaxy were still strong. not that me moving over would have made a massive difference, but I thought it certainly evened things up a bit. And again, I'd been there, done that in terms of the coaching role. Would like to think I know the game fairly well, and obviously I had a relationship with quite a few of the Comets anyway. So I thought I would do a Kenny Miller and jump ship.
I just hope you're not going to go all the way, Kenny Miller, and go back. That's the only thing.
We'll see.
So talk to us then about, so you've been in charge of the Galaxy, now you're in charge of the Comets. Talk to us about how is it different, I guess, would be the simple way of asking the question. In what way is managing the Comets and being a player, obviously, on the Comets, you're an active player still. In what way is that different from being part of the Galaxy, or are there any similarities between the teams that we might not notice or take for granted when we're on the bench shouting abuse at each other on a Sunday?
I'll be honest, it's probably not the answer you're expecting, but it's very, very similar. As a player, you would think that it's maybe different, but having been one of the only people that can comment on it, the other one, I guess, being Albert. Albert's obviously played for both as well, but not really from that coaching perspective. It was, I think, both teams that we've got here in Glasgow are thrive very much on the social aspect of it, and I wouldn't say any team does that more than another. So I would say it is very similar. What I would say is that the current squad that we've got with the Comets now are very, very eager to learn, and that's only been helped with the addition of the A-League, the Development League. Got a lot of guys that are really putting the same amount of effort into that as what you would expect some of the guys that have been there for a bit longer to put into the Triple A League. So, yeah, I would say very similar in ways, but certainly a group of players that now I can see us really going places in the future.
Now, I've got a good comment here from Nick, and I'm going to highlight it here. Should Albert be permanently banned from third base coaching?
Absolutely. Albert should be nowhere near base running decisions.
Now, you give him a hard time, but Albert, you've been teammates with Albert for like decades, quite frankly.
Too long.
You've seen him on both sides of the Glasgow club. You've managed him. You've played alongside him. How much of a stud is he? Obviously, he won the home run crown last year, despite the fact that he played, I think, most of the year on one ankle and had basically thrown his arm off in 2019 and tried to pitch for us. Talk about his impact on both Glasgow sides, because obviously he's been a part of winning teams in both colours.
Yeah, again, bit of a blessing in disguise when he showed up. You could tell right off the bat he was a good player, and he's been consistently a good player. He'll not admit it, but he's nowhere near as good now as what he used to be. And I can say that I know for certain. But
I'm saying nothing.
No, still absolutely cracking player. And I'd imagine if anybody in the league was to pull together a kind of all-star squad of who they would want to go and play in a tournament, Albert would be in the mix. Unfortunate that he's had his kind of niggling injuries over the last couple of years. Certainly not much of an option in terms of pitching anymore. He again would be the first to admit that. But he's his own worst enemy. He wants to go into a season and make it a bet with everybody that he's not going to strike out for the full season, and then you see him in the first game going up and swinging it rubbish for his first at bat, and then he just beats his tail up at every opportunity. But you know, for every strikeout you're going to be getting 3 on base for the rest of the game, and probably 8 stolen bases along with that. So he's really, really good player, really key player.
Yeah, that boy's faster in one ankle than I've ever been in 2 feet. It's crazy how nonchalantly the guy can still steal a base, even with all the injury problems that he's had. Now, you mentioned tournaments. I want to quickly jump on that, and then we'll move on to a wee bit more about sort of memories and stuff like that, favourite memories. You've played in a few tournaments yourself. You've won at tournaments at several different levels. Why don't you tell us some of your favourite memories of playing tournaments, both as a child back in the day and more recently when we've had things like Belfast and Kent?
Yeah, certainly some of the best memories when it comes to baseball. First one I could remember would be when we went to Florida. Would have been 2003, I want to say. Again, I was probably one of the youngest there. Wasn't necessarily taken along to play as such. I was more there to go to Disneyland, but it was great. It was a lot of the older guys were there, and at the time I looked up to a lot of them. Guys like Winnie Tone, guys that had been there since I was small. So I guess in a way, these guys were kind of role models, and it was great to just go. I'd obviously never been to America before at that point, and it was amazing. It was just a different level altogether, especially if you're quite young and had only ever seen baseball played in Towcross. To then go over and see the level at some of these high schools and that play at was great. So that was the first one. Again, we had some really fun times out at the Little League qualifiers in Poland. We'd done that for a couple of years. That was really good, getting to play against some different countries. Again, it's not until you go to these things that you realise how high the level can be at your age group. We thought we were absolute world beaters when it came to baseball, and you're going and getting absolutely bashed off teams like Belarus. And you're like, right, maybe we're not so good. But again, the experience and the memories that you take with it are really, really good. Moving on from there, when we started playing pony, so you're talking about kind of anywhere from 14 up to 16, 17-year-old, we used to go down and play in Frank Conn's tournament in the north of England. So that was against teams like Cartmel Valley, Halton, and we actually kind of, at that point, we were a group of guys similar to what I was saying about the Galaxy earlier. We'd played together for a good number of years. We all knew the strengths that we had, and we performed at that tournament for a good couple of years. Off the back of that, when we started our adult team, we managed to get a few friendlies in that, arranged with a lot of the northern teams. After that, you're probably looking, probably about that same time as when I was playing for Great Britain. Had a few tournaments abroad, so we played in Turkey, Czech Republic. There was a tournament in Sweden. Just again, amazing memories playing with guys that you'd never ever met before. And some of the guys that I still speak to now, kind of 14, 15 year on. So good memories, and again, just kind of everybody was there for the same reason. Everyone had the same passion. And then, as you said, kind of moving into the more recent years, playing in Belfast was always a good laugh. More so for the activities that happened off the field, but it was not good. Really good that things like that still get arranged, and that there's still a passion and an interest in doing that. So for as long as I can, I'll be making sure that we still get to as many as we can.
Brilliant, man. Now, we want to wrap up shortly. I've got two more questions that I want to ask you that I'm going to source from people in the messenger chat. Unfortunately, they're busy, so they're not able to join us live tonight. Before I do, I just have one last thing to ask about the Comets, and that's the basic one. So we've had sort of fits and starts to begin the year in the Comets. Obviously, the single A team 2-2. It's an okay record, and certainly, the league is still well within reach if we can get a run of games together. Slightly less successful in the AAA team. That's 2-3 at the moment. It's disappointing, or are you quite philosophical about it and happy to just see how it all plays out toward the second half? Obviously, we have a full season this year, so it's not panic stations at this point like it would have been at this stage of last season when it was a shortened year. What's the goal the rest of the way, and how do we pick up the momentum and get back to sort of challenging in that top three?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult. disappointing to a degree, but again, with an air of realism, there's some other teams in the league, certainly from a AAA perspective, who are looking particularly strong. And we've unfortunately had, myself included, a few guys out with other commitments and some niggling injuries. So it just goes back to that kind of age-old story of you've got a squad there, and if your strongest 9 show up, you could really compete, and you're going to be sitting with a relatively strong bench as well. But it's just waiting on those opportunities to kind of show and highlight what you can actually bring to the team. So I guess the game that we played a couple of weeks ago in Edinburgh against the Devils highlighted that. Wasn't necessarily our strongest 9, but we had a few key players in some key positions, and we managed to get it over the line against a fairly strong Devils team that day. So it's hit and miss. I'd like to think, certainly as people start to become more apparent and more visible over the next few weeks, we'll start to get that momentum going.
Yeah, absolutely. My mistake. I have 3 other questions that I've sourced from Comets, because I'm going to display one of them here. I have to ask you why you've shat it from fantasy this year. Thanks for the comment, Chris.
Too busy. And
yeah.
I just generally, when it comes to fantasy baseball, there's too much to keep up with. It's it can be a bit of a minefield, and a lot of the guys that are in our competitive league are the guys that are up at 6 a.m. trying to make one of their transfers for the week for a guy who's going to be pitching that night. So I was fed up of losing, to be fair.
That's fair. That's absolutely fair. Now, I want to jump into the messenger chat here. I've got one for Andy Vaughan, who I think is one of those guys that you alluded to earlier, the committee members who are really putting a lot into the team and helping carry some of the load for you. So I have to ask you, you got married this year, and then in brackets, congratulations, which hearty congratulations from me as well for that. Being totally honest, what was the more wonderful moment? Your wedding day or throwing a no-hitter for Team Great Britain?
It would be the latter if it actually happened, but again, that's a bit of a running joke. It was a fairly decent pitching performance, and I like to tell people it was a no-hitter, but it wasn't really. So
when we say fairly decent, how good are we talking here? It was
it was actually, I didn't even start the game. I came in as a relief pitcher in a game against Romania, I believe. And we managed to see the game over the line, but I think the final score was 15-14, so it couldn't have been that good. So we'll go for my wedding day.
Your wedding day. That's a good answer. That's smart. So I've got a couple more here. So from Saeed, who just recently returned to the Comets, he's another guy who's played on both sides of Glasgow. He also played a bit in Edinburgh last year. Saeed asks, what's the story behind the space-themed Glasgow teammates, and were there any alternative names that almost made it official before Comets and Galaxy was set?
That's a good question. Again, it was a bit of a kind of group vote at the time. We were going to split into 2. And we shortlisted, I think it was maybe at the time, 6 or 7 team names. And we just kind of put it to a vote, and then kind of over time, the ones that had the least votes, throw them out, put it out to a vote again for just the more common 3 or 4. And then I think a lot of the people out of the options that were left liked the idea of Comets and Galaxy because they were kind of interlinked and had a theme going. Yeah. So I think the final 3 came down to Galaxy, Comets, and kind of resurrecting the old Glasgow Stars name. But we wanted to kind of leave that where it was and kind of give them their own history to maintain. So we went with Galaxy and Comets. There was the Stars that was kind of out with that. There was the Bulldogs, the Brewers, which was a lot of people liked the Brewers because of the
Tenants,
the link to the Tenants factory, and we were going to approach them for sponsorship. There was the Panthers, which I think a few people liked, but it turns out that's the name of a Glasgow-based wheelchair rugby team, if I'm not mistaken. So we decided to also leave that with them. And then I think the only other name was the Glasgow Rockets, which in Scotland is a bit of an ambiguous term. So
Yeah.
we thought we would part of that. We didn't want to be seen, as much as we might be a team of rockets, we didn't want to be branded that way.
Yeah. One last question for the boys. From Gordon, how do you feel about the progress of the Development League and the team, the single A team in the Comets camp? A few of the boys making appearances in Triple A. And how are you feeling about the Knights this weekend? Well, obviously, this is going to be the third part of the early season trilogy. We've lost both of the first two games by very close margins, 7-6 and then 7-5. 7 seems to be the magic number for Edinburgh teams. They're all winning by 7 to something. So how do you feel about the progression that Glasgow Comets have made in single A, and how are you feeling about this Sunday?
Big fan of the Development League and what it's doing for players' personal developments and their growth in the game, but certainly how it's helped us this year. As I said, a few players missing for key games, and certain people's scenarios dictate that they maybe can't play an away game. Like Santino, for example, is maybe going to struggle this season with work commitments. So I think a lot of guys have stepped up in a way. There's more opportunity there this year, maybe more so than last year, for guys who are showing an element of improvement that are going to be called upon. And when we do need to call upon them, they're going to go in and try their best. So again, go back to the game against the Devils, we probably had say 4 guys come straight off the single A game straight into the Triple A, and we got the W, managed to see it out. So really happy with the way it's going, really happy with the improvements that people are making, and hopefully we'll see within a season or two guys really start to step up a bit and maybe not get as much game time in the single A because they're really portraying themselves to be more of a Triple A guy.
For sure. Now that's going to be everything from me. I know that Jason, you want to finish off with the question you wanted to ask. We'll let Jason go after that. So by all means, there.
Yeah, no worries. First of all, people probably know Jason was probably the toughest out in Scottish baseball I ever faced. We had some epic battles up the plate, and he seemed to foul about 10 pitches off in every at bat, and then end up lacing a double to left center. It drove me insane every time I had to pitch against Jason. So I'm glad to hear you're still doing it after 24 years in the league.
Thanks very much.
So we had a question for you. We gave you a little heads up. So we wanted you to put together your all-time Glasgow team. So let's hear who you got for your top 9 guys and where they play.
This was actually particularly difficult, and I'm pretty sure me and Xander have had similar conversations in the past about who we would put in there. So I've pulled something together. We'll start with, again, some of the guys, if they're watching, who have only been involved for a few years might not know some of these names, but there's guys that have been with us at certain points of our history that have just been a different class, and I'd really like to see what the team would have been like if a few of those guys were still around. But I'll start on the mound. As pitcher, I have picked Luke Powell. Number of guys that could have fit the bill, but Luke just brought that something extra to the team, certainly from a coaching perspective as well. By no means the fastest guy that we've ever seen pitch in the league, but he just had a sort of control and a demand. He knew what to throw at the right time. He had a good variety, a really good arsenal of pitches to throw. And again, at the plate, it was an absolute beast at the plate as well. So I would go Luke on the mound. Behind the plate, I've went for one of the founding members, if you would, the guy I was referring to who started the club. It was actually his son. So I've went with Winito behind the plate, who again, back in the day, absolute cracking player. Actually had an air of a switch hitter about him. He liked to bat both left and right-handed. And he was that good that kind of back in the day, he had a few months playing over in the States. He went over to play for, I think it was Auburn, I'm not too sure. But he played over there, and again, he came back. Over time, he had other interests and stuff and kind of ended up moving away. and I used to still speak to him outside of baseball, and he was always talking about coming back. It never really happened. But again, cracking player and a really good catcher. So I've went with him at catcher. First base, John Nelson. His bat says it all, really. It would be a much stronger team with him in there than it wouldn't. And again, just for everybody around him, he was really good at giving hints and tips and stuff, and really big on the social aspect of it as well. One of the first guys to always offer his services at the pub and ask if anybody wanted a pint. So big John at first base. Second base, I've went with a guy, I'm not sure if you remember him, Jason, a guy called Chad, Canadian guy who joined us. That would have been quite a few years before we split into two teams. Chad was a bit of jack of all trades. Obviously played at a pretty decent level when he was younger over in Canada. Really good pitcher for us. Played probably everywhere in the field, and again, just really key on some of the coaching aspects of it and helping everybody around him. So Chad at second base. A more familiar name to some, if you would, at shortstop, John, you'll certainly know, would be Francis.
Absolutely.
So yeah. Francis at shortstop.
One of the best players I've ever played beside in my time.
Again, really nice guy. Came along, always had a smile on his face, and would always put in a decent performance. So we went Francis at shortstop. Third base was a hard one. I've went with a guy who I think was initially introduced to us by Albert. There's a guy called Papo, Cuban guy who played for us for a number of years. Liked to show up for a game at the weekend with a wee drop of whiskey in his bag to help him get through the day. But absolutely cracking guy. Him and Albert, when they were together, were a good laugh. Used to bounce off each other. But Papo was always good for a few home runs every season. Really solid player, so put him at third. Outfield again was difficult to choose from. I'll start with left field. I've went with Darren McCulloch. Again, a mainstay in the team for a good number of years, and obviously was our coach when we were younger. He was in a similar position to what me and Xander were, that he took on the team when he was of a slightly younger age, and he's seen it through up until handing over to ourselves. But Darren, for being in a similar position to me and only really ever playing in Scotland and learning kind of through our coach that we had when we were younger and kind of learning the game himself, ended up kind of playing to a really good level. I'd like to think you agree with that, Jason.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Centre field, I thought I'd give my main man a shout. I've went with Xander. And
Hollywood Harrison.
Kind of got better with age, but actually back in the day was a bit of a demon on the mound. Didn't have necessarily any overpowering stuff, but really put a lot of his focus and spare time into kind of learning different pitches and try to kind of keep people off their feet. And then certainly ever since I've seen him move down to London, he's obviously playing down there, and he's starting to get a good bit of competition, and he can obviously still play to this day. So I would give him a shout in centre field. And last but not least, in right field, just to wind them right up, I've put Albert.
I mean, there's no doubt that he could play there if he ever wanted to, but that certainly is, you wouldn't see Albert in right field anytime soon.
No. A few times we've had a couple of run-ins because he outright refuses to play outfield, despite the fact it's to go and play centre field and that he would do an absolute job there. Yeah. So I thought it was quite fitting to put him in right.
I'm sure he'll appreciate that, Jason. Now, I know you're quite pressed for time. We've actually gone over, so I'm going to let you go. I just wanted to quickly say before you go tonight, congratulations in advance on 25 years in the game. You've been a linchpin of this league. You were the first person that I came across when I approached baseball, the Glasgow Baseball Association. I think it was Xander that replied to my message, but the first person I saw in terms of coaches when I went to my first training was yourself. I've hated you as an opponent. I've begrudgingly had to stand back and admire your ability as an opponent, and I've been absolutely chuffed to bits with how you've adapted to running the Comets and coming over and being a teammate and helping us to win that Glasgow trophy back in 2020, and the strides that we've made in the last year or two since you've been along. So that's all I wanted to say tonight, and we'll let you go if there's nothing else from you, Jason, there.
No, I think Jason has the second longest tenure in baseball in Scotland, only outdone by Wolfie. So
yeah, who's been around for 60 years or so.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're going to have to stick around quite a bit longer if you're going to equal his record.
Some great company to be up there with. But to be fair, if Jim Seahan, Gio are anything to go by, and I'm still playing at their age, I'll have another 25 year in me.
Hope so, man. See you on Sunday, man, and thanks again for joining us tonight. It's been a pleasure.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
All right, cheers, Jason.
So that was Jason Stott, coach of the Glasgow Comets. It's been a long time coming getting him on. I think it more than lived up to the hype. We've had a really great interview there. What a great guest! And like I said, man, he's been a linchpin of Glasgow baseball for as long as anybody. And he's only 29 years old. He's hopefully got a long tenure still to go.
Absolutely. It was good to hear some of the stories that guys didn't know, maybe his younger playing career, playing for the juniors, or they actually played there, because they actually traveled quite a bit there, and they were quite a very good team for many years there before they actually joined the league there. And you can obviously, you look back at the history and see just how good they've been throughout the years. And Jason was right there all the time. Like I said, I wasn't joking about he was one of the most frustrating batters I always faced. Hated facing Jason every time.
Yeah, guys like him, Xander, Santino, Mick McCusker, Albert, I think, came along a bit later, but those guys have got to be like the Scottish baseball equivalent to Man United's class of 1992. They're just guys who are all so good at the game, so knowledgeable about the game, and they've obviously gone from being just kids playing for the love of it, doing a bit of traveling, getting to play against teams in all sorts of different countries and all over the world. They're growing into young men who went and won a championship against all odds. And now, obviously, you've got Jason running the Comets and as president of Glasgow Baseball Association. What a story he's had so far that's far from over.
Absolutely, yeah. Like I said, I'm curious. There was talk about testimonial next year for his 25th year. I might have to actually come back for that one and get an inning or two there and dust everything off.
I hope to see it, man. I'll be there to video it and commentate on it and just rinse you, quite honestly.
You'll still be in your hitting slump then. I'll have more hits for you than that one game of the year.
Well, I hope not, but I'm not going to get too excited. Let's
pick a bat up in 5 years, so yeah, we'll be all right.
I can't seem to keep a bat for more than 5 minutes. They seem to keep breaking. Let's move on to the close of the show. We'll quickly go over the schedule for this coming Sunday. So it's week 6 already. The AAA schedule for this Sunday, the 8th of May, there's only 2 games on. There's the Galaxy up in Aberdeen to face the Oilers. We'll see if the Oilers can get off that schneid, as they say, and get that first win of the year, or if the Galaxy can improve to 500. And the Comets head out east to face the Cannons again. That's obviously the league leading Cannons, 5-0. They're the best team in Scotland at the moment. It's going to take a massive effort from us guys to get anything from that. Should be a bloody good game of baseball, though. In single A, you've got a full tab. The Breakers are down in Galaxy to face they're down in Glasgow to face the Galaxy, I should say. Breakers at Galaxy. And the Comets and the Knights, as I've mentioned earlier, we're going to close out that early season trilogy of games out in Edinburgh. The Knights have taken the first 2, 7-6 and 7-5. Both very close games, very entertaining games, and games that were fun to be part of. So it's going to be interesting to go out there and try and get that win finally, and hopefully the third time will be the charm for us. Single A. So 4 games all in, 2 in each division. It should be a good weekend of baseball.
Absolutely. I'm going to try to do my best and come down. It's been fun to pop down and catch an hour game, say hi to everyone. And it seems like there's been an old timer every time I've gone down there. So big shout out to Chris Lettingham, who was down there, and we had a nice catch up there. It's nice to see everyone kind of still you may not be playing anymore, but pop in, at least, go and support the team when you can.
Yeah. Now, I'll hopefully see you over there on Sunday. That's going to do it for the show tonight then, unless there's anything else you wanted to cover.
There is one more thing. So we want to wish Paul Houston and his partner Fiona congratulations. They had a baby boy. So it was Theo David Houston, a.k.a. Teddy. It was born on Friday the 29th, and he just let everyone all know there. And as far as we know, the baby boy is doing well. So congratulations for all of us over here. They've been a bit of fan of the show, so we're always a big fan of growing the baseball family.
Absolutely. Welcome to the world, Teddy, and big congratulations to Glasgow Galaxy alum Paul Houston and his partner. That's amazing. Amazing news. Fatherhood, there's nothing better than it. And we both know that, Jason. So all the best to Paul and his partner and the new arrival. Paul Convoy's left us a comment. Wolfie is going to be 75 on Friday. So a wee shout out to him, the legendary Wolfie, who's been involved in Scottish baseball longer than, quite frankly, anyone in history. 75 years young, and I don't see him stopping anytime soon.
No, not at all. I think he'll be on the baseball field as long as he can. So that's good. We'll have to see. I forget. I need to go and see Wolfie and give him a big hug and see how he's doing. Yeah. So
I think at this rate, Wolfie might be the first person ever to posthumously umpire a baseball game.
It's possible. So it was good to see. I saw he umpired a game up in Tayport recently, and I was like, "Oh, it's good to see Wolfie's still out there." So I'm not going to ask about the strike zone, but he was up there.
I think he's taken to umpiring in the field more. I think his days behind the plate of probably, or at least winding down, if not coming to an end. But yeah, he's still an asset to Scottish baseball. The guy knows more than anything. He's probably forgotten more about Scottish baseball than I'll ever learn, quite frankly, and it would be the case for most people. So yeah, big shout out to Paul, Fiona, Terry, and Wolfie, who's 75.
And Wolfie, who we're going to try to get on the show. We're going to try to do an in-person interview with Wolfie. Because I don't think he's going to have a computer with a webcam to us to do the show. But we'll try to sit him down for an hour and get some stories out of him and just see where it goes. And then we'll play it to you guys maybe over the summertime, because I know I'll be away for a week or two when we'll be able to do a live show. And you never know their work schedules. So we might have to just kind of get Wolfie down for an hour. And I know we have to do the same with Gio. And we've got a couple of legends of baseball. Scottish baseball that we've been in touch with, and hopefully will come on the show as well.
Yeah, for sure. That's going to do it for tonight. We've actually almost reached an hour now. Only thing left to say is let's go Rangers. Beat the fucking Penguins.
I don't know. It's hockey chat. I don't know. It's hockey chat. So.
All right. Good night, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good luck this weekend to everyone playing.
Absolutely, and especially me, because I need it.